What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. It is my pleasure to, in person, get to hang out with one of our favorite guests. Been a key part of the show for many, many years now, and that is Nick Underhill of New Orleans Football. Nick_Underhill. For as long as I've known Nick, morning person. He's kind of like the canon in that way. Morning person maybe hasn't been always the most apt descriptor, and yet I texted him this morning. I was like, hey, bro, I know you're set up by us. You going to be here in person? He said, no, I think I'm going to be there at 10 a.m. I said, you bitch. And then next thing I know, he said, you know what? Fine, I'll get up, I'll get moving. And here he is. Nick, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. Yeah, couldn't have it. Couldn't let that stand. You know, you got me on that one.
Dude.
Yeah, one word cut to the soul. I was like, I got to get up. I got to get up.
But the funny part is I just sent it as a joke, and then it actually worked. It changed it coming up. Let's go. So exciting time right now going on in New Orleans football as there's a ton going on with the New Orleans Saints. Let's start, though, before we get into anything maybe too Saints-specific. Last night, is that technically Senior Bowl? Or not Senior Bowls. God, we were there last week. Super Bowl Media Day going down. Heard it was insane. Wasn't it like 20,000 people, like in the public there? Like, what was it like last night?
Yeah, it's gotten crazy. I mean, that used to just be like a normal event for the media. Like, you would go to it. It would just be middle of the day, people on the field, couple people at the podium. It's turned into a whole thing with there's a band playing, there's a light show, there's the Mario Davis like yelling things on a mic for reasons I didn't understand. Like it has gotten crazy. But my favorite thing I think about it is afterwards when you're leaving and you kind of walk through, there's like a media holding area, like everybody's eating and doing their work. And you look around, and there's like the freaks that were out there that like had their whole body painted. Yeah. And there's just like Blue Man sitting there in a corner by himself, like his whole body painted like an avatar, like in a corner, like eating some chicken. And it's just like you got to have a lot of confidence to be able to handle the aftermath of dressing up to ask Jalen Hurts a weird question.
It is the beauty. It is one of the best parts of any NFL Sunday. And it's interesting, I think you actually see this more in the NFL than you do college, but the super fan, when he is removed from his natural environment, right? It would be like seeing a literal bull in a china shop. It's incongruous. Instead of being surrounded by other people cheering on the team, when you see him like at the stall taking a piss, like you see Whistleman and he's just walking in, like it's very odd when you see them out of their kind of home environment. And again, so I mentioned this convention center, the only time I've ever been here was for Comic-Con, multiple years. I used to love to come every year. I haven't been in a couple. I need to start coming back. But I'm always struck by how really all this is Comic-Con, but for NFL nerds. And that's very much like the people who would have gone to last night to pay. So if you're going there as a public member, like you're just paying to watch people answer questions?
Yeah, I don't get the appeal. Like they pump in some sound from a couple of the podiums, but yeah, you're basically watching people and walk around like for an hour. Like I don't quite understand it.
It is NFL nerddom.
Yeah.
The same way that somebody's like, yeah, I waited 2 hours and paid $100 to take a picture with Christopher Lloyd or something, which, whatever, shout out Michael. I love Chris. But, like, yeah, that's exactly what that is. It's just nerddom, which I appreciate. And I like, whatever you're nerdy about, lean into that. Love it. Enjoy it. So, Nick, yesterday on the McAfee show, Hester saying what y'all have reported on, what everybody knew already, which is that essentially – Kellen Moore is going to be the guy in New Orleans. Yeah. Barring like a Billy Donovan-esque crying, I actually don't want to do this sort of change of heart, he will be the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Well, let's start here. I mean, you believe like that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, we've been covering him for 10 days as if he's the head coach of the Saints.
Yeah.
If you go to our website, the last 42 stories have Kellen Moore in the headline. If he's not the head coach of the Saints, I will be absolutely shocked. I think a lot of people will be absolutely – he's going to be the coach of the Saints barring a disaster. And if yesterday's headlines didn't create cold feet and there's no indication that it did, he's going to be – he's the head coach of the Saints. And, look, they're trying to play by the rules. Nobody's trying to have what happened to Arizona when they hired Gannon. The last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, they ended up losing, I think, a third-round pick because there was like improper contact or whatever. The language is very, very careful. Mickey Loomis told all the other candidates, we won't complete our process until after the Super Bowl. Well, if it was Mike Kafka, if it was Darren Rizzi, if it was Anthony Weaver, they hire him today.
They'd already be hired.
Yeah, it's done. So they're waiting until then. And then if you listen to Kellen Moore, it's, we really like how the process is set up, and then we can focus on the game and then continue it after. Like, it wasn't, I'm not into it. He said that line at least 12 times yesterday, too. I stood next to him for about an hour, and he just kept saying that over and over. But, yeah, Kellen Moore is going to be the next coach of the Saints, barring a disaster.
So, I won't. Okay, give me and I'm sure if I'm sure you're already working on it. Have you started to beautiful mind every breath that Kellen Moore has ever taken up to this point? And
yeah.
how are we feeling? For those that don't know, Nick always has. It's one of the best parts about New Orleans on football. He has deep dives where he'll be like, I looked at every route run by this player over the past 7 years when it was inside the hashes, and here's what we have revealed, right? So what has the deep dive, like, how are you feeling about Moore's potential as a head coach?
Yeah, I like him. Look, I mean, I think if you look at him over the course of time, like, there's been multiple different offenses in Dallas. It was a lot of pass concepts, and granted, like, I think the argument you can make against him there is that it was too cute, too creative, too, all those words people like to use.
I've been calling him a fancy pants passing lad. That's kind of what he was at the time.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It is. It's a great way to put it. But it was almost too much. And I think as you go into Philadelphia, the first couple weeks of the season, they kind of were leaning into that a little bit. And then he figured out what they had. Oh, we got Saquon Barkley and these massive guys on the offensive line, and they leaned into that. But the thing I like most about him, I think, is how he's kind of helped Jalen Hurts deal with blitzes. And I think as you watched him earlier in his career, there was a little bit of, like, panic in the pocket, not knowing what to do. And as the blitz comes, like, they have designed kind of these safety net outlets that have allowed him to kind of play with more confidence in there. And he knows where he's going. It's predetermined. Everything looks really well prepared. And they've been able to lean into that. And I think that ability to kind of blend with what you got and kind of look at your players and say, what can I do for them, and build around it. I think it sounds so simple. And it was kind of the thing with Taysom when Kubiak came in. It was like, why weren't you just doing this? Like, it's common sense. It makes sense to do it. Oh, you have Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. You should be a really vertical team. Why do you have Chris Olave running a crossing route over the middle where he can take these, like, huge hits? Like, that isn't his game. And it seems like Kellen Moore's a guy that can kind of lean into that stuff and build off it. And he wasn't a huge zone run scheme guy either. And then he gets to Philly, and you have these massive men that can just run. Yes, giants. And they lean into that, and they do that. So I think he's just somebody that's very adaptable, and I think that's kind of probably what his identity is as a coach, is someone that can just kind of play to his talent. He's willing to sit into these things. I'm sure he has his prototypes and all the stuff he wants to do. But if those things aren't available, he isn't trying to jam Cedric Wilson into a role. He's going to find what works for him and play off it. And I think that's what he's going to end up doing here. He seems really smart. Talking to him for a while, my big questions about him were kind of his leadership, how he would command a room. I think he's got enough personality. I don't think he's somebody that's going to come out and be like Rizzi or Dan Campbell or anything like that. But Kevin O'Connell isn't that type of person either, and it can work. He had an explanation for everything. He seemed well put together. I know with a player like Alvin Kamara that he's going to ask you 45 questions about every single thing about why you want this split on this play, and he feels like a person that's going to be able to answer those things. And I think if he can, he's going to be able to win over this room. I like the idea of it. I'm not convinced on anything. I'm not saying it's the right choice, but I think that he has a chance to be a good coach here.
Well, look, you went offensive after going defensive, which I think is good. You went young, which is brings a certain freshness with it. It's got a bit of the lottery ticket sort of potential. The problem is, we had somebody in Mobile described us as the Saints opening as maybe the worst in 10 years, which, maybe a bit hyperbolic, but because bad cap, aged roster, not a lot of draft capital, like not like a great pick, no real quarterback plan, and so it's just he's almost walking into a situation where it's like, if he does have success, you need to grade him on a curve and score him even higher because he's walking into a really bad spot. When it comes to quarterback, though, do we have any inklings, guesses, or insight as to maybe where he's leaning there?
He went out of his way to give Derek Carr a compliment.
Okay.
Yeah, like he. So there was a game at man, I don't know, his last year. He was a senior, and Boise beat Fresno 57-7. I believe was the score of that game. Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
He
We
murdered him.
we were talking about it. We were talking about it earlier on the show today.
So he got asked about it, and like in a
crazy.
It seemed like he was like, okay, I got a chance to kind of say something nice about Derek here. So it was like, yeah, we killed him, but man, Derek Carr, great career, great pro, great this, great that. I think theoretically, if we pulled up the salary cap, you can get rid of him, but you can't do anything else. I think it makes a lot more sense to kind of, if you're going to clean up your cap, to get rid of the old guys, and then a year from now, Derek Carr goes, and it's kind of a two-step process. I don't think you walk into this situation and just want to get rid of Derek Carr and then you can't do anything else. But I'm fine with either direction, honestly. Like, I'm fine with going completely in the tank, getting a higher pick, getting rid of him, and going that way. But I would be surprised if that's the way they go. I think it's probably more likely Cam Jordan pay cut, see if Tyron's still worth it, see if DeMario's still worth it. I think he is. Maybe clean up some of that other stuff, eat some cap, and then get rid of Carr a year from now.
Yeah, and it's the funny thing about Carr, man, right? I've never seen a player where the public perception versus the actual NFL guys are so at odds with one another, right? The public perception remains that Derek Carr sucks, he's absolutely awful, blah, blah. Well, everybody in the NFL is like, he's actually pretty good. He's not great, but he's like pretty good. I mean, he is the NFL Mendoza line. If your quarterback is better than Derek Carr, you're probably actually happy with him. And if he's worse than Derek Carr, then you want to run him out of time, you're done. And he is just living in that in-between.
It was the Cousins line, and he kind of
true. He kind of took it from Cousins.
Yeah.
Although I do take a lot of petty pleasure in watching the exact same thing happen to the Atlanta Falcons. Like, maybe the only difference is that, like, it feels like maybe Penix is going to end up being pretty good. But who knows? Like how do they feel about Rattler internally?
Yeah, I think people like him, but it's kind of the same thing that look. There's a lot more people talking now because everybody's gone.
Yeah,
but, like, it's the same. It's the same feeling I think we have about him out here. Is that, man, there were some really good things But, like, on the flip side, there's no way of knowing. And, what the hell was going on? Like, for whatever reason, he lost his cool in the second half of games, and he just couldn't keep it going. There's a lot of talk about, the second half of the season, too, with Kubiak. Like, that maybe the players weren't necessarily, like, the system kind of, there were a lot of hits. There was a lot of injuries. A lot of things weren't working. And there was, there's maybe a little bit of, like, buy-in early that wasn't there late, so some of that's kind of happened. I don't think that's the case with Rattler. Obviously, he would have been all in with it. But, I think there was just some frustration with that offensive system, and it was the same things we were talking about. Like, wow, like, why don't they have a counterpunch for anything in the second half of games? And now you're in the second half of these games, and the players are kind of feeling the same way week after week after week. And I don't think you can keep going out there and doing the same things and not having answers for things that are fairly obvious problems. And, so – I'll be interested to see him get a chance in another system. And the thing with Carr, like, I think there are a lot of people around the league that view him as, 20th best guy. I think the problem with Derek Carr, and the problem that I have with him, is that I think there's kind of some protection of self out there when he plays, and there's just been so much criticism on him over the years that I get it. But there are plays where you watch him, and it's, second and 4 to go for a touchdown, and he'll throw the ball away. And it's just like, what are you doing here? Like, the numbers are great. The quarterback rating is great. The interceptions are down. Like,
Top 12.
It's counterintuitive kind of to look at it and say, like, well, I wish he threw a couple more picks, but I wish Derek Carr would be willing to throw a couple more picks.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's not unlike, to bring back what LSU fans will remember, like 2 years ago with Jaden Daniels, that was the entire thing. Like, even Brian Kelly's like, we need him to, like, protect the ball a little less.
Yes.
Like just be willing to take a few more shots, a few more risks if he's really going to maximize what he can be. Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.